not time for music. It's time for our Koffee Klatch to continue. And Pat Cahill is with us from Buffalo Ridge Defense.
Good morning, Bob.
Morning. And I see that you didn't bring your photographer with you. There she is.
Yeah, the photographer's there.
We're
going to get some social media pictures out of this. Besides,
Good.
When you're as good looking as we are, I know.
You might just as well come on in and sit in on this.
When we have faces for radio like you and I.
Yeah, well, that's how I got in radio. They said, you'll never make it in television, and they were right.
Yeah, perfect.
Actually, television, I tried that once.
You did?
I did not go on. Okay. I did not like it. I went and auditioned. I can't even remember the station anymore. And they sat me in front of this camera and they videoed and all this. And I sat there and I thought, you know something? This is really phony. Because you ever see a TV set?
Yeah, well, it's really tiny.
Oh, it's
Remember,
very
we were
tiny.
in the photography industry, so we had small sets, tiny, lots of makeup.
Yeah. And it just was not my thing.
Right.
I like radio. I can
you
say
can be
what
genuine and say what you want to say. That's called freedom of speech.
Exactly. And pretty much nobody can recognize you when you go anywhere. Or at least you hope they don't.
Yeah, I hope they don't. Yeah. Did you say that? Yeah.
Otherwise, I'd have to sign out Buffalo Ridge Defense and figure out how to defend myself.
Well, you'd have to do that.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about Buffalo Ridge Defense.
Okay. So Buffalo Ridge Defense is a firearms training company, and what we do there, our primary goal is to help responsible firearms owners become more capable stakeholders in their own personal defense and the defense of their family. And they might have guns, and everyone thinks, well, your gun is there to protect you. Yeah, that's part of it. The other part is know the law. A firearm might make you hard to kill, but knowing the law and doing things right makes you hard to convict and keeps you out of jail. And that's
Yeah, and that can happen.
Yeah, it can. And you can do everything right and still be charged with a crime. So it's better. We focus so much on conflict avoidance, situational awareness, and using people skills and using verbal jujitsu and other things to de-escalate and walk away versus be involved. And, you have to ask yourself sometimes, is this really worth arguing over? Can I just walk away? And
Yeah. Well, something confrontational like that, is that usually because an argument has followed or preceded it, or
it could simply be
just a basic disagreement?
The guy that wants to road rage and flip people off, throw fists, chase you into a parking lot because you cut him off, or he thinks you cut him off, or whatever it is.
Yeah,
there's a lot of road rage incidents, and there's a lot of there's just a lot of people that think that the best way to get their point across or win is to hurt people. And you always have people that are stealing, or whether they're on, whether they're stealing to support a drug habit or whatever it is.
In today's world, there's really no way to anticipate anything other than take your course, right?
Well, sure, you can take the course and will help you anticipate it, but you have to win the battle in your mind first. And I have the simple rule. Never go anywhere with a gun that you wouldn't go without a gun. If you were too afraid to go somewhere without a gun, if you think it's too dangerous or there's bad people there, why would you go there with a gun? Why would you be there, yeah. All right? You would just avoid it. And there's areas that, when I worked as a national sales manager for a large corporation in my other life, I went to all over the U.S. in places that weren't necessarily desirable to go to, right?
Sure.
But now I have a choice, and we have a choice where we shop, where we do. I like shopping local here in Amory, you know. We live here because of the lifestyle. We live here. We raised a family here because of the lifestyle and the awesome community that Amory is.
Yeah, because it is, generally speaking, safe.
Yeah, I would agree. It is safe.
Thank goodness we live where we do.
And so many people worry constantly about, well, what if some jihadi terrorist comes running into town, right? Well, that's probably not who's going to hurt us here in town.
That's
right?
true, yeah.
It would be more of someone that's looking to support their fentanyl habit with wide open borders and fentanyl and coming in. And, the number of fentanyl deaths and meth deaths that we have in here, it's crazy. And people it's so addictive, and people get desperate to meet their needs, and that's where burglaries happen. That's where thefts happen. That's where carjackings
And some folks get desperate in fear of that happening, which That's its own enemy.
Yeah, you can't let fear control what you do. You know, you have to be good at where you're at. But you know, one of the things that we try to stress at Buffalo Ridge and what we teach is that laws are always changing. What you can do to defend yourself or someone else and how you defend yourself constantly changes. And one of the prime examples of that was just yesterday, the Minnesota Supreme Court. This affects Minnesota law and affects you. And you might be from Wisconsin, but when you cross the bridge and you're standing in Minnesota, you got to follow the Minnesota rules.
Sure.
And just yesterday, the Minnesota Supreme Court, and Minnesota, is, by the way, is one of the states that had a duty to retreat. You don't have the privilege of using self-defense until you first have a duty to retreat,
Back
right?
off,
And then if you don't have to put yourself in greater jeopardy to try to retreat than the threat itself. But but in Minnesota, before you can exercise the privilege of self-defense, you had a duty to retreat. If you were going to use a deadly weapon, then you had a duty to retreat before you could even use lethal force in self-defense. Yesterday, Minnesota Supreme Court ruled that you can't even brandish or show your weapon until you've retreated or tried to retreat.
I was going to ask if
if an example, if there was a husband, wife, and 2 kids in a park in Ramsey County, Minnesota a few years ago, and 3 street thugs came walking up to them with brandishing baseball bats, walking at them in a menacing manner and threatening them, right? And didn't say we're coming at them. They felt they were targets of going to be a mugging or a robbery or an assault or whatever it was going to be.
Yeah.
And the dad, who was a concealed carry holder, simply lifted his shirt and said, didn't draw his gun, just lifted his shirt and said, I have a weapon and I will use it to defend my family. And the street thugs wisely chose to go the other direction, right?
Yeah.
And you would think everything was fine. Well, 2 things happened. One, he never bothered to call 911 to report it. The street thugs know the law also. So when he got in his car with his wife and kids to leave, they called 911, the thugs, and said, hey, this guy with a gun just threatened us in the park.
Oh, boy.
And the Ramsey County Sheriff's Office arrested them until they got it all sorted out. But with this new Supreme Court ruling, he wouldn't even have been able to lift his shirt to show the thugs he had a gun.
Really?
Without trying to retreat with his family first. So you can't even display or brandish the weapon or show the weapon according to the law or the Supreme Court ruling.
Yeah.
And it was a 4-2 ruling with the Minnesota Supreme Court. One justice, the dissenting opinion, actually said, this is wrong. This is, this is going to change everything. It makes Minnesota the most restrictive state when it comes to self-defense.
Wow.
With a weapon. And when I say, showed the weapon and he showed his firearm when he was wearing his firearm, this particular case didn't involve guns. It was at a bus stop and someone had pulled a knife out. And then the other gentleman, to ward off the attack, pulled a machete out. So they both got charged, right?
Yeah.
In self-defense. And they ruled that he didn't have the right to brandish his weapon, his machete, until he tried to retreat first. And so, I mean, if you think about it, if you had your baseball bat and someone was threatening you or coming at you and you perceived a threat, and you wanted to pick your baseball bat up and say, I'm going to hit you with this. You
can't do that.
According to this Supreme, you have a duty to retreat before you can threaten to use that baseball bat. And that's I would say hopefully it's overturned, but it would have to go to the U.S. Supreme Court in this case to get overturned.
To get
because
overturned,
this is the Minnesota Supreme Court, and that's Minnesota law. Minnesota has laws, Wisconsin has laws, Texas has laws. Everyone,
they all have laws.
They all have different things, and as a concealed carry holder or doing something that you're going to defend yourself or someone else, you need to know what the laws are. The state you're standing in.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Which means that if you're going to travel, even if it's only once, if you're thinking about taking a weapon, you better find out what the law is where you're going.
Absolutely, and it's your responsibility. It's not the state's responsibility to tell you. It's your responsibility to determine what the laws are
Okay.
in what's one state or another, right?
Yeah.
And there are apps that you can get on your cell phone. I know you don't have a cell phone.
No, I
just
don't.
told that. But
So I'd have to call Pat.
so you'd have to call me, yeah.
Yeah.
Or you can go on the website, but you can go to USCCA, United States Concealed Carry, so USCCA.com, and then / to their reciprocity page, and it literally will pull up a map of the United States. You can click on any state or any state you're traveling through, and you can find out what the laws are in that state as far as having a weapon, as far as duty to retreat, as far as the castle doctrine, defending yourself in your own home. Can you do that? You know, Wisconsin has a castle doctrine. Minnesota doesn't have a castle doctrine. You know, Wisconsin's castle doctrine applies to your home, your automobile, or your place of business, where Minnesota has a duty to retreat. Even in your, their court law says in your own home, however, in Minnesota, all they do is they don't make you have to retreat before you can defend yourself.
Ah, okay.
If they're there to commit a felony against
Yeah.
you or someone else in the home. If they're there to steal your TV set, there's nothing
That's
you can
okay,
do.
yeah. Gee, I tell you, I have to ask the obvious question.
Yes.
Is there any way that laws affecting, like what we're talking about, could be standardized across the country?
Well, sure. You could. Well, first of all, the concealed carry law, you'd have to have, right now, you have to have a permit with a state that has reciprocity. So Wisconsin, if you have a Wisconsin concealed carry permit, you can carry in 36 other states.
Okay.
You can't carry in Minnesota unless you get a Minnesota permit. Now, that's how unique it is Wisconsin recognizes Minnesota's permit for Minnesota residents, but Minnesota doesn't recognize Wisconsin. So Wisconsin residents have to have a Wisconsin permit if they're going to carry a concealed weapon or a taser or something like that.
Yeah.
But if you're going to cross the bridge into Minnesota, you either have to case it and put it away in somewhere where you don't have access to it, or you have to get a permit to carry in Minnesota. And so it would be great if there was a national reciprocity law.
Yeah.
And it's been introduced in the legislature, the U.S. Congress, several times to get a national concealed carry. It's typically something that's supported by Republicans and not Democrats, or some Democrats do, but it's typically people that want you to have the right to be able to defend yourself.
Yeah.
Support it, and the people that don't. And consequently, and we have the current administration doesn't believe the current president, who would have to sign that law, there does not believe in national reciprocity. In fact, just the opposite. So
no, he just wants to take your guns away.
Yeah. So you need to come up with the right combination of judicial, legislative, and the Senate. They all have to agree.
That would require a bunch of people to agree, and that's practically
and
impossible.
apply common sense, right?
Oh yeah, but that's the other thing.
Yeah. So
the whole upshot of this is if people want to carry, and want to conceal it or whatever, just get a hold of Buffalo Ridge Defense. Find out the law and take a course.
Yeah, absolutely. Wisconsin has an open carry law, so you don't have to get a concealed carry permit. You can wear a handgun on your hip and walk down Main Street Amory, and that's perfectly fine. You see people doing it quite often.
Okay.
And you could carry an AR-15 across your chest and walk around anywhere in Wisconsin, and that would be legal also, right? However, and some people, I was just at the county fair in a booth, and people come up to me and say, I don't believe in having a concealed carry permit, right? And I said, well, great, then don't get one. But at least come to our class and learn what the laws are, so you know what the laws are and how they pertain to the use of force, and when you can use the use of force in self-defense. Because again, for whatever reason you choose not to get a permit, if you don't want the permit, and don't want to be on the list, they say, then don't get the permit. But at least know what the laws are. So if you're forced, in the unfortunate event, and we hope it never comes to that, you're forced to use any kind of force to defend yourself or your family, that you know how much force you can use and when you can use it appropriately to keep yourself out of jail.
It sounds to me like your first line of defense
is in your mind.
It's in your mind. Know the law.
Well, it's know the law and don't put yourself in situations or if someone's road raging and shaking their fist at you and saying, I'm going to beat you up, you cut me off. I look at him, wave to him, say, God bless, have a great day, and drive away. What do I care? I'm never going to see that person again.
Exactly.
Right? So I don't need to be right all the time.
It goes right back to common sense.
It kind of does, doesn't it?
Well, I'm out of time already, Pat. We always get into this, and I forget to watch the clock.
Well, I'm watching it for you.
Yeah, I know you are. I see you glancing at it, and I am not smart enough to take your hint and look at it.
Yeah, there you go. So, well, we got it. We're right there on time. We got
right
15 seconds left. So I appreciate you. I appreciate the opportunity of sharing here in the community and what the radio station does for the community, Bob, and what you guys are doing. So
thank you very much. We appreciate Buffalo Ridge Defense.
And if someone wants to take our upcoming class, we have one at the end of the month on the 24th.
All right.
And they can just go to buffaloridgedefense.com and check out the classes.
All right. Thanks, Pat.
All right.
By the way, you shot a lot of pictures, and I never did get you on the air.
That's okay.
That's okay. I don't need to be on the air.
But I wanted to. It's a goal to get somebody on the air. I'm kidding. Thanks a lot.
All right.
The Cahills from Buffalo Ridge Defense.